Hey.
Now they're real like particular with the words and stuff for music. Monday, sis, what's up?
Hey, you came in right.
Yeah, I think everyone for Easter. Now, even if you don't celebrate Easter today, I know that you were tuned in last night to the Earth, Wind, and Fire and the Isley Brothers verses, which was super dope and amazing. Definitely want to celebrate and need things like that for the culture. And just the appreciation of music, the impact it has on the movement. So just definitely wanted to start off with a little bit of that this morning to kick it off. As people are tuning in from a busy week, a busy month of March, activism and doing the work. So happy Monday.
Man, y'all see, first of all, you came here right on time. I DJ in real life, but you need to DJ, bro, because I don't know about y'all, but if y'all missed the verses last night, y'all, I mean, I don't know. I feel bad for you. You can catch it on YouTube, Instagram, whatever. I ain't trying to I'm gonna promote it because it's good, but it was like soul snatching. Especially for people who are old school lovers. Like I am a diehard old school music fan. I actually should have been born in like the 60s or 70s. But I got my entire life last night. Earth, Wind, and Fire, the Elements. Shout out to Chicago. Shout out to Ron Isley them. Shout out to Ron Isley's new teeth, y'all. He was serving Zaddy last night. They gave it to us for the culture. And if you were not feeling that verses, you were not raised right. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna be real with it. But
I would have to agree, sis. I did not know that was Ron Isley in the beginning. I was like, okay, well, maybe he's gonna come out and make some grand. I did not know. It threw me off the first couple of minutes. I still was trying to figure out, okay, where yeah, I wasn't expecting that to be him.
That was Ron. They showed up and they showed out for like 3 hours strong. They did not. They wanted to go home. I mean, they could have kept Steve Harvey a little bit. Steve is a little controversial. Every once in a while, he okay, and then every once in a while, it's like, Steve, would you just go somewhere and sit down? And he wants to be in the elements so bad. He wants to be water so bad. He wants to be earth, wind, and water. But earth, wind, fire, and water. But it's just like, but
I totally agree. I mean, Steve did his thing. I think that it was all good, all in love. And, it just reminds us that we as a culture, as a people, have attributed so much to this society, not just in America, but globally across the world. And that should be celebrated on platforms that are owned by us so that we can make sure that we're controlling the dollar and that it goes back. I want to add that part too, that the money goes back to the artists who too often are not appreciated, and not just the singers or the performers, but the musicians, the writers who have to continue to fight for masters and their credit, hence, Anita Baker. So, I want to definitely commission everyone who's tuning in and those who have the capacity to, invest, that we definitely need to continue to invest in more platforms that are owned by us so that we can circulate those dollars back into the Black community.
That part. If y'all tuned in to the verses last night, drop some comments in the chat. Let us know what y'all thought about it. And as always, they were dressed, baby. They were shop, honey. They were casket shop. So, man, I'm still on the high. I think that's what's carrying me through this gloomy Monday in Chicago. But nonetheless, fam, we are here, and welcome to another episode of TDRS with my homeboy, my brother, Mr. Jason B. Allen, and we are missing Neo again today because he's out getting into good trouble. So just want to say welcome, y'all. And we were also supposed to have activist extraordinaire, like Black woman extraordinaire, Kimberly Jones on the show today, but she's also out getting in good trouble. And it just, when I'm thinking about the absence of Neo and Kim, It's like, damn, we would definitely love to have their voices all day, every day. But Jay, just, this is the work that we do as activists. Like, we have to pivot all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, we got to be ready to adjust. We got to be ready to move. We got to make things happen. And so that's what they do. That's what we do as activists. But we're going to make sure that we show up and have these conversations with y'all. Right, Jay?
Most definitely. And, when I think about the month of March, it was so, it was almost like sitting in a public school classroom during Black History Month and being conditioned by all of the films and documentaries and books that really highlight whiteness during Black History Month and, remind us of the power of Jim Crow and the power of slavery and the power of segregation. And that's how I felt the month of March, except that we were actually living it. And seeing again how Black women are on the menu, y'all. I'm really excited about the conversation today because Black women are still being attacked on every end. Like, it makes no sense. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing? Like, it's not enough. It's not enough attention around that. And so I'm excited about the conversation today. I know it's spring break here in Georgia, and teachers and everybody is off, trying not to think about the daily work that we do. But however, I want to definitely lend my voice to this conversation today. I have my book and I got a resource today. It's a pretty dope magazine. It's to celebrate Black women. So I'm excited about the conversation today.
Yeah, so I mean, like Jay said, we go get into it. We go hold it down, and we're talking about Black women, public enemy number one, right? So what got us started on this conversation is the arrest of Representative Park Cannon in Georgia when she, was upset about these horrendous, voting bills. Not well, horrendous, oppressive, all of these things, just terrible as voting bills that they passed because they still pressed about Donald Trump losing the presidency, and most importantly, about Black people getting out to vote and about Black women pushing the vote effort. So Jay, you in Atlanta, you in Georgia. Tell us about like how you feel as an activist, how you feel again about Representative Cannon being arrested, how you feel about this continuation of Jim Crow in the South, like this perpetuation of Jim Crow. Tell us about it. What's the energy down there right now?
So since it's deep, I feel that there's a lot that's happening. Black people are still trying to survive in America. You have people coming together, but you still have people who are, remotely still strongly divided. So shout out to Attorney Griggs. He's been on the podcast before. Good friend, fellow activist. He's been on the platform with the Atlanta students to talk about how we could protect them in regards to Gen Z, but also most importantly and most particularly Black women who, like Representative Cannon, has been attacked. Now, the students and I, we work with the People's Uprising, that is, a coalition of leaders, elected officials, people across the gamut that have come together from entertainment to investors, representatives in the state house, but also in, local city councils. Have come together to really say we are the people and we want to see better policies. We want to see, changes around voting legislation that allows people to have the access to vote, not restricting them to vote. And so, since one of the things that I would say to people that are listening and, again, encouraging people to share these important conversations, is the impact that Gen Z has. It impacts me. I'm pissed off. I'm hurt that, seeing Park at the Capitol, standing for voting rights and for these officers who work. See, this is the thing that gets me. They work in the Capitol. It's not like they don't know Representative Cannon. It's not like they know that, she goes through these processes where they know she doesn't have, a firearm on her, something that's going to cause them to feel as if she's going to, attack them as an insurrection that we saw in January. Right. That was BS. And we have to admit that. And I need white allies to say, this is absolutely ridiculous. And it is unacceptable for a woman, for a representative, for a person of color, for a human being, for any person to be treated in that manner, especially when the governor was trying to take us back to an era of Jim Crow, where people who support him and fund his campaign felt more empowered. And so what I want to leave to end that point is, how does this impact the next generation? And so I think about Hannah and Aisha and Janae and Kayla and so many of the young girls in Atlanta who are leaders across the state of Georgia that saw this.
Yeah.
And then their parents. And they're like, okay, these young girls are going out here to protest and to lift their voices and, you know, to advocate for change, because not just for them, but they're thinking about for their kids and their future generations. We don't want them to have to relive not just what our, you know, parents told us about, but what their parents and great grandparents, and now for this generation, great grandparents lived through, for us to have to see it again. So that's what I would add to that point in regards to the impact of how people are feeling down here.
Let me jump in, because there's a couple of things that you hit on that made me like, you know, that just like hit that spot for me, right? Like the first part is that as a Black woman, I think about how to navigate this space of activism in a place where, in a sense of being able to be an effective change maker, but also not end up an enemy of the state. And what I mean by enemy of the state is like so many of our ancestors that were murdered, you know, trying to do this work, right? And so it's like always trying to navigate that space as a Black woman, as an activist, as someone who's, you know, taking up for our kids and our communities, right? The second piece is when you talk about what this does for Gen Z, it's really sad, because I wonder when we think about history, right? Like, let's just say if some of our kids watch Judas and the Black Messiah, and they're seeing these things happening, they're seeing the persecution of Black leaders that are actually trying to affect change. It's like, it's discouraging. It's that continuation of, again, oppression, and that continuation of fear. Like, y'all see what happens when y'all try to step up and step up for y'all communities. Like, y'all gonna end up like this. And so it's that continual effect of trying to really keep that fear alive in our communities. And it makes my heart happy to see that our kids aren't dissuaded, you know, that they aren't scared, because they know that these changes need to happen.
Most definitely.
And you know, it's just really sad, because when you think about what we have to fight, or how we have to fight as Black people and as Black women, when we saw how, you know, the race was unfairly snatched from Stacey, I'm forgetting sis last name.
Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams. She's right behind me on the wall too. Shout out to Stacey Abrams and Black women.
Yeah, we got a Stacey Gates here that I don't particularly like, but I ain't gonna get into that. I almost said her, but yeah, we saw how the race was snatched from Stacey Abrams, the governor, and then y'all got this guy down there, and he's like, you know, Trump Jr. He's on Trump's, you know, balls or whatever, and doing everything that the Republican Party wants. And then, you know, we seeing this what happened to Rep. Cannon, and how this small protest of these unjust policies were compared to the insurrection in the Capitol. And so we're seeing all these things, and I'm like, what effect does it have on kids? But not only that, it makes you mad. It pisses you off.
Yeah.
I'm not like tripping on how Rep. Cannon responded, because it's like, we've done so much, you know, blood, sweat, and tears in this country to ensure that we have rights for y'all to just, you know, snap y'all fingers and sign a policy and make it go away. And so I understand the frustration. And that's where that connotation of a dangerous Black woman comes from, or an angry Black woman, because we get upset because y'all constantly trying to break our damn backs, right? And so I get it. As a Black woman, as somebody who's constantly seeing our communities, you know, enduring these injustices and this pressure, I absolutely get it. And she was well within her right. She didn't threaten anybody. She didn't have a gun. She didn't ram a car into anything. She knocked on the door, and yeah, they told her not to. So what? She did it. She's an elected official. How could she not do that right?
And since there are other ways that could have been handled, you know, I kind of mentioned earlier, you know, that's just like for teachers that work in school buildings. You know, if I see that, you know, there's a meeting that's happening, and, you know, They do that. It's the role. I mean, I also feel like the police officers, they play a role and they know what their role is, and they're going to do that regardless of what common sense may say. They're watchdogs. I mean,
Right.
and that's what history has, shown us. And who are they watchdogs for? Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
still an unwritten code that says, yeah, you're supposed to do this. This is your job. So if you don't want to lose everything, because again, everything connects back to money. So my resource today is White Fragility, which is the important book to this conversation because it breaks back down history. And we like to forget that racism is a real thing. And for white allies who are listening or those who may be tuning in, it's difficult for white people to address something that they don't see on an everyday basis because it doesn't impact them. Now, white liberals, white allies that are in the streets marching, they are impacted by lending their voices and their resources, but they're impacted in different ways. They're not impacted by racism that, as the book touches on, prejudice, which is prejudgment, but then also the stereotypes, the attitudes, and the generalizations. And so what we saw, how does this connect? Well, it connects to this. When Representative Park Cannon was at the Georgia Capitol, there was a narrative that the media tried to slip in, which they always do, to reflect her as being the angry Black woman. Why is she so upset? Why is she beating on the door in this manner? She wasn't beating on the door. She was knocking on the door, but there's a difference. And I wanted to make sure that I address this because this is how Black women are attacked on a daily basis and we let it slide. So we have to stop letting it slide. Mm-hmm. So this is for people who are publicists, who are in the media, whether you're bloggers, you're reporters, journalists. This is important. We play a role in this. Because when we write that she's beating on the door and a white audience is reading it, they automatically articulate that. Let's go to the book. Just like we were in church. Let me go to the book. And this is what the book says.
From the book of what?
It says that racism is developed by these stereotypes, attitudes, and generalizations that are perpetuated. So the media knows this. And we have to come in and say, she was knocking on the door. Everyone does have the right to knock on the door. But when you say beating on the door, that changes the narrative. And we have to be in positions to change the narrative. The narrative has to change. And so that's why it's so important, Tanisha, in this time, because we are our ancestors. When I think about the work that we do, I go back and this is the nerd in me. I'm always reading about people's life stories, obituaries, because my daddy does so many of them, books that chronicleize how people live, how they moved. And when I think about Lorraine Hansberry and Langston Hughes and James Baldwin, they always had their cigarettes. They always had their thought conversations, but they were capturing the moments in the movement so that during our time, as we're referencing things, we could come back and say, well, what did we do to change the narrative? Yeah. And so right now, what are we doing? Yeah. What are we going to do, whether we're in our mid-20s, in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s? What are we going to do to change the narrative for the next generation? And that's what Cannon did. She took an action that changed the narrative, because here's the other question. I'm going to leave this for you and those viewing. If Representative Park didn't say, you know what, enough is enough. He's not going to sign this bill behind our back so we can't see and know what's going on, and the people are just going to wake up and their rights are taken away. If she didn't have the courage and the boldness as a Black woman, right? Let's celebrate Black women in this too, to do that, then would we even be having this conversation? Would we have even known the seriousness of what's taking place if a Black woman didn't sacrifice herself to say, if I don't do this, our people are not going to wake up. Our people are not going to know. Our people are not going to get the message. And how many times have Black women had to do that so that the masses of people, red, yellow, black, and white, can get the message?
So that's an interesting question, because I think that we've seen, again, since Joe Biden's election, we've heard about a number of states looking to put policy and legislation in place that would strengthen voter, policies and restrictions and things like that. And so I think it's a matter of being proactive, but also being active in the moment. And so so Georgia is leading the charge in a number of spaces, so-called, has led the charge in a number of spaces, specifically with flipping blue, right, with the past election. And so we know that a number of other states are looking at Georgia and it's like, okay, if Georgia reversed these laws or, made it more difficult, really, let's just call a spade, made it more difficult for Black people to vote, how can we do this? And they coming down the line. And so I think that what this warrants is a conversation around how do we activate not only other Black women, but Black men, Black children, Black allies in other states to push back, because this is going to roll across the South, and not just in the South, in the North too, because we got that like veiled racism. It looks like very up here and very liberal and progressive and all that bullshit. But at the end of the day, it's just, it's the Klan in suits, with blue ties that claim to be Democrats. And so how do we spark conversations around being proactive to ensure that, or to try to stop this legislation from rolling through the country, because it's coming down the line for sure. I just want to say real quick, y'all mighty quiet today. Y'all tuned in. I know it's Monday, but y'all, I don't know if y'all tired from the verses last night, or maybe y'all was doing some Easter egg hunting, whatever, Resurrection Sunday. But y'all getting these comments and tell us how y'all feel. We really want to know.
Yes, well, definitely.
If you've been labeled a angry Black woman, an angry Black man in times where you've had to change the narrative, let's hear about y'all experiences so we can talk about them on the show. But we talk about activism all the time, and I think this is a moment in which we really activate that activism and try to prevent this from happening in other states, because it's gonna happen, or they're definitely looking at Georgia, and it's definitely gonna be Jim Crow all over again. It's just
I mean, the Jim Crow is definitely trending on social media platforms, and people are talking about this globally, like, wow, like Jim Crow, like so America is reverting back to old times where publicly,
but is it reverting?
Right, but are we reverting, or are we still there? Like, did it really ever change? So I'm glad you said that. I want to lend this to the conversation. When we think about how do we change these systems, economics, politics, and government, education, and sports. I want to read something really quickly. Again, this is from White Fragility. The 10 richest Americans, 100% are white, 7 of whom are amongst the richest in the world. The richest 10 people in the world, 7 of them come from the United States, who are white, mostly white men. U.S. Congress, 90% white. U.S. governors, 96% white. Top military advisors, 100% white. President and vice president, still with President Obama and Vice President Harris, is still 100% white, because there are only 2, right? U.S. House Freedom Caucus, 99% white. Current U.S. presidential cabinet members, 91% white. People who decide which television shows are produced and granted, 93% white. People who decide which books we read, 90% white. People who decide which news is covered, 85% white. People who decide which music is produced, 95% white. I can keep going down the list. But until we start seeing some equity in those numbers, we're going to continue to keep having these same conversations. And so people think about activists as, oh, they're only talking about civil rights and social rights and, LGBTQ and voting, but we're talking about everything across if you economics, that's everyone. That means any platform, any space that you're in is going to impact you. So how are we pressing the needle in regards to equity for everyone, and including Black women? Because Tanisha, I'm gonna end on this. We know that everyone was granted rights before Black women. Black women were always last, but yet Black women have always been the strongest voices in movements to help white women with women's suffrage, with the LGBTQ community and their rights. It was Black women. I'm just throwing it out there. It was Black women, but when we look at the Black women who are ostracized for speaking their voices, like Anita Hill, against things that happen to them, women that speak out against things that happen to their bodies, the number of Black women that have died in the pandemic from having children because of the inequities in healthcare. Yeah, we all need to be activists. And I'm perplexed that, and I'm gonna end on this.
Hold on, Jay. No, hold on. Y'all, Jay finna start preaching. Y'all get ready. He ain't finna end that. I'm gonna let him go. Go on, start preaching, bro. Go ahead.
Here's my deal. we're talking about Black women now. Now I'm doing our research from this podcast, and even in Atlanta, the shows where people tune in the least and have the least to say are when we're talking about protecting Black women. My show that I did on The Boys had over 1,000 views. 1,000 views. Matter of fact, 1.4. Right? The young girls didn't have that many. When we try to lift Black women voices, look at Jamarian Robinson's mother, Materia Robinson. People don't want to hear Black women's stories, but it goes back to what this book is saying, how we are indoctrinated to silence Black women and not protect Black women and not advance Black women. Or if we do advance Black women, it's only because we want them to do a song and dance for us that is going to entertain us, but not free their people. And so how many Black women want to still be signed up for that? So it's a real conversation. And I'm curious to even ask why there are not more heterosexual Black men that are leading these conversations. Where are y'all?
Man,
now, I mean, I know my dad and my uncle, now my people, they doing their part, but all these brothers that I see that can speak out against, you know, all these other things, like, I just feel like we starting to sound like our oppressors, and it's targeted at Black women or anyone else that is a deemed other. So what are we doing? Black brothers, what we doing? Because I know a couple of people, and I ain't saying no, I haven't seen people uplifting women during Women's History Month.
Listen,
I want to know, I'm asking the brothers, so any brothers, anybody that's married to a Black man or a Black or brown man, like, ask them, lean over and knock on the door and say, hey, excuse me, I know you're doing something. I got a question. What have you done to uplift Black women?
Let's get into that, because first I wanna just highlight Toya's point. She said that she has had to temper her passion because it's so threatening to some of her counterparts, right? And I think that, you know, as Black women and Black people in general, we've had to do that in a so-called professional space, because that is socially what's acceptable as far as professionalism, right? And Toya, I just want to say, honey, like, I want to shout out the Surge Fellowship, because that's where I learned that I didn't have to do that shit. Excuse me, Aisha, I'm sorry. Apologies for my language. We got Aisha Dukley on the show. She tuned in. She's like one of the dopest activists, young people that Jason was just talking about. But you know, I want to apologize for my language, and sometimes it slips out. But we've had to do that according to what's socially acceptable and what's right in order for us to fit into that mold. We've had to temper our personalities and our passions. Those days are over. Those days are over. We showing up authentically. We showing up Black as hell. We showing up as who we are, right? So I just want to, I don't know if you still doing that, but don't do it no more. Like, really, please don't do it. But
yeah, please don't.
Yeah.
Please don't. Like, people need to be their authentic selves. And here's the thing. We need to be gaining to be bold, right, and making change, not in trying to get likes on social media, because at the end of the day, you know, I see everyone that has these growing platforms. You know, we've discussed this too, you know, trying to get the right people to come on the show and talk. But let me tell you, that's something that a lot of people use, and it may not be the best strategy. So why am I saying that? Because Toya, Aisha, so many people that are watching, your voice is important. Right. I need everyone telling their story. This is what I tell my students. You tell your story, even if it's only 2 people. It could be you and a grasshopper and a butterfly. I don't care. Open your mouth and share your story, because these are the things that people need to hear. Everybody ain't moved by Michelle Obama. Everybody ain't moved by Whitney Houston. Well, let me take that back. You may be moved by her voice. The point that I'm making is people reach different people. And so your voice is important, and Black women need to be comfortable enough in spaces to say, you're not right. Like, and I feel like Black men have to create spaces to say, we got to change this too, because at the end of the day, we are all we have. We know this. And so Black men can't say, I'm trying to keep on and hold on to power because I'm a man and I got to leverage that. No, we know that's not right. We know that system doesn't work. However, if we want to get likes, then we'll continue to perpetuate the system as it is. If we're trying to make change, then we're going to break the mold, and we're going to be the innovators that create a new way of living in a new America. I'm trying to figure out who's willing to do that.
It sounds so easy. It sounds
Oh
so.
yeah, but we know it's not.
I mentioned that it took me to. I mean, I'm gonna be real, y'all. My Facebook profile is public. I'm 35 years old, and it took me 34 years to feel comfortable or to get to a place of feeling some sort of comfort in being my authentic self and sharing my voice and taking these masks off as a Black woman, right? And so when we think about how society and the white supremacist structures suppress us as people, we have some shed, we have to shed those ideals of what we're supposed to be in certain spaces, how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. We need to dismiss these notions of what isn't right or what isn't acceptable. And what they've told us, or what's been ingrained in us, is that who we are as people isn't right. It's barbaric, it's ghetto, it's hood, it is unprofessional, it is tacky, it's whatever. All the negative words associated with what Black is what we've been told and what we've been taught and what's been ingrained in us. So to shed all of those and feel comfortable in our skin, and more importantly, feel comfortable and bold enough to advocate in those spaces without fear of retribution, because it's going to happen. The minute you are a Black person in a predominantly white space, whether that be white faces or skin folk that ain't kinfolk, whenever they feel like you start getting out of pocket a little bit, is when you become a threat, and then you lose, you're sacrificing something. But as I posted earlier, it's going to take that sacrifice, it's going to take discomfort for us to escape complacency, for us to escape this oppression, right?
That's
and
right.
so it takes a growth period. It takes a shedding period. It takes so much for us to step into that boldness of being strong, beautiful Black people, intelligent Black people, powerful Black people, for us to stand in these spaces that condemn all of that and say, you know what, I'm not going for that shit. This is wrong. This is right. And I don't give a damn how you feel about it. And I don't give a damn what you do to me beyond that. It takes a lot of balls to do that. And
Yeah,
a lot of people ain't there, so it's like we do, along with conversations about being proactive and attacking these things, it's those internal conversations that happen within our communities about how we get ourselves to a place where we feel we unapologetically advocate for us.
No, that's dope.
We talk about, and I agree with you when we talk about, like, because one of the things that I want to touch on when you were talking about where the Black men speaking up, it's like I see on social media all these, this Black man versus Black woman battle, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder where it comes from, because I'm, sometimes in my little conspiracy theorist corner of my mind, I'm like, who's planting these little seeds in our communities and on social media to make us hate ourselves or to make us come at each other the way that we do, but
let me answer. No. I mean, no, I'm just like, oh my God, because I was actually reading about that. I mean, sis, to your point, the seeds, who is dropping the seeds, y'all? Let me piggyback off of that and say this: gangsters don't have money. Let me say this as a 17-year educator. I know for a fact that my young men and women who get involved in gangs, they're not coming from households where they got money to be strapped like that and be getting all this stuff. So I'm giving that analogy to Tanisha's point to say, who is dropping the seeds? And that is the best question, right? Because let's become farmers. Everybody just listening, let's all become watching. Let's become farmers, right? And so, gardeners, if you don't like the farm, you can be a gardener, either one. We're planting, right? We're getting ready to prepare a harvest. And we got to think about that. A harvest begets what? What you sow into the ground. Mm-hmm. So who is sowing these seeds of discord in our community? Who is sowing seeds of oppression and suppression and division throughout our country? And I don't want the first answer to be white people, because here's the Ripley's Believe It or Not. It is a system that people buy into. So yes, it does benefit white people, but not every white person benefits from it, because let me tell you what history has shown us, that the lower class or lower income whites, they're not benefiting from the system. They're the watchdog. They're the thugs. They're the real thugs. They were thugs first by their own people. And then they were like, oh, okay, we can call Black people thugs because they act like them. That's how people act when they don't have enough, when they want what we want. So they started naming us after things that they were naming poor white people. Let me just throw that out there as well. And so who is sowing these seeds? And we've got to think about that. So now that we know that people are sowing seeds of discord, now I'm turning it back around on us, because I just believe that the power does reside in us. What kind of seeds are we sowing? Because I know what Tanisha is doing. If you go to her Facebook page, you see how she's connecting with other people. She's a dangerous Black woman. She's public enemy #1. But people sleep on activists. About it. They sleep on teachers, right? Because they don't look at us as being powerful. But if you think about what good teachers have you had, and then start asking how many people have had this one teacher that are sowing seeds. I'm saying all this to say this is why Aisha and the Atlanta Student Coalition leaders are so important, because these are my troopers. Like I'm like Professor Xavier. I said, okay, let me build a team of X-Men. These are young activists that are saying we need to reimagine schools. Because I'm saying it as a teacher, and other teachers are saying it. Other Black women are standing with me to say we need to reimagine schools, right? But now we have students that are doing it. And so when we reimagine school, we get to create the platforms where we can reach more people, that the seeds that we're sowing change things. So that's how we combat that. Is it easy? Of course it's not easy. However, somebody has to do it, because if I know the enemy is sowing seeds, I may not be the planter. I may be the person that's bringing the water, and I may not bring it on time that day. So they seeds may not get the water that they need. I may be the person that's going to catch the seeds and throwing them out the community so that as many people don't get harmed. We got to find our role in the movement. Everybody isn't the spokesperson, but what about planners? What about the Bayard Russets who did the infrastructure and the plans? What about the people who are training the young activists? What about the people that are protecting them? What about the people that are investing and saying we're going to buy communities so that if these activists lose their homes, they can come stay here? Everybody play a role. So I want to put that out there too. Like, we're not powerless.
But more than that, Jay, more than that. First of all, again, y'all share this, drop y'all comments in the chat. We want to hear what y'all got to say, and share this broadcast out, because me and Jay just on here chopping it up like we do. I think one of the things when you talk about who's sowing the seeds, I think, you know, that when we go back to that earlier point about messaging, right? And so we think about information that's shared like via social media or, you know, telephone within the community, right? And so if we're sharing seeds of empowerment, we got to also be mindful of sharing seeds of, again, oppression, trauma, things like that. So when we talk about, like, let's just say somebody gets, and I know everybody's on this kind of like, it's like the revolution will be televised, right? But more than that, people are like, let me record this because, you know, it's important, or let me record this maybe because I want to go viral or whatever. But when you recording certain things that have been traumatic to our community, right? You are sowing seeds of trauma. You are sowing seeds of oppression. When I see people share videos on social media, maybe of gunshot victims or, you know, some, you know, fighting in the street or whatever, that to me is modern day lynching. Why share that trauma? And I understand that we need to be aware of what's happening, because we know the only reason why we're more aware because social media has made us aware, but we need to be more mindful of the things that we're sharing on social media, so that we, again, won't push these messages of inferiority, of fear, of oppression, of hatred, of brutality against Black people, because those things also dampen and harm the movement. And it also dampens and harms self-determination and self-actualization. So we need to be careful about those too.
No, I mean, sis, to your point, the United States is a global power, right? And they communicate the message of white supremacy through what? Movies, mass media, corporate culture, advertising, you know, even missionary work. Like, it reinforces a narrative. So I'm going back to that point earlier about how are we changing the narrative. I'll even go on to say this, that it's normal for white people to have apps or communities where they post pictures of their children playing at the playground, or, you know, simply skating in the street with their friends. But we buy into the larger mass media that we have to have attention. And so even if it's negative attention. So that's why reality TV is so popular, because it's like, wow, we can really capitalize off of people suffering and tearing down each other and the hatred. And we may say that, oh, it's guilty pleasure. And I'm even talking to myself right now because guilty or not, I do still watch the Housewives and other, you know, reality shows. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, yeah, I can see the good and the bad. But people will say, and I even messaged Carlos King. I was like, brother, you know, educators have interesting lives too. Like, we're not just sitting at home grading papers and like we just reading a book. Like, we actually have interesting lives, but nobody wants to see that, right? Because it's like, no, what kind of drama would a teacher have? That's what we're conditioned to see.
Was a fool.
Right. That we have to have, you know, our audience, and it takes away from the actual art of storytelling and how we see each other. So if we see Black women as object, then, you know, people are going to do what? They're going to objectify them unless we change that. But we want to make money. So how much do I really want to change it?
I mean, I think that's
a real question.
That's absolute good question, because it made me, when you're talking about like we want to make good money, I see so many people, like everybody got a clothing line nowadays, right? And then you see all these t-shirts like protect Black women are beautiful and all that stuff. But you know, it's like if we go wear these things on our chest and on our bodies and, you know, post them on our social medias, then we got to be true to it. I'm big on, if I'm wearing something, if I'm representing the brand, then that brand should be something, a messaging should be something that I resonate with, or that I can share, you know, knowing that, again, I endorse this. And so talk about protecting Black women. What are ways that we can do that? And I think that one of the things that you hit on is like, again, while this reality TV is entertaining, it is very demeaning, you know, and it does objectify Black women. Is that protecting Black women? No, because that puts out this message to the world that we can do these things to Black women, and that Black women, again, are angry and all this stuff. So it's like, how
that was good. I want to bring up something too to that point. When we think about reality TV, Black women, it was Black women that helped, you know,
Mona Scott
this, like from Nene Leakes to Whitney Houston when she did the Bobby Brown reality TV show, to, you know, New York. But then they don't want to give Black now. And I brought up Nene because I know that she was attacked for saying that, well, you know, Bravo doesn't want to give me they don't want to give me my own show. They don't want to give me ownership in this franchise. That was the real message. But people took her character on the show, because it's reality TV. They took her character on the show and they used it against her, because that's how we do it. It's conditioning. People know that. Instead of people saying, you know what, if two Black women on the same network are saying that they've been pushed out of their own shows, they weren't given credit for the ideas, they aren't getting the, you know, the rights, they're not getting paid, et cetera, and so forth. Why would we not band together and say that we're going to not support the shows? Because people are saying, well, the shows also pay other Black people. So here's the caveat to this, guys. Are we just going to continue to get pennies on the buck just so we can say that we're getting some capital to come in? Or are we going to boycott these companies until they start paying us what we are worth? Because here's the other thing. If we stop watching reality TV shows, what would people do? You would go to YouTube, or you would go to another platform and be entertained. So why we can do this, but it takes that planning, right? It takes that willingness to say that if Black women are saying that we're not being compensated with this network, then we need to stop watching, period. And we need to go to networks that are going to compensate us. And every Black person should be saying, you know what, we got to support that. But it's not that easy.
Let me challenge you on that, Jay, right? Because it's not that easy. It's like, if that's the case, we would do that with entertainment. We would do that with sports. Like, you know, realistically, when Colin Kaepernick was blackballed, we have enough capital in Black millionaires and billionaires to have started our own Black NFL, to have started our own Black basketball league. We have that power, but did we? No. Same thing with entertainment. Well, we've had Black run and own networks, and now it's predominantly white, if not all white, or, you know, some other group. We have the power, but have we exercised that power? No. And we got to ask ourselves, why not? Because it's easier sometimes to just get along and go along.
Oh yeah.
Challenge the status quo and build our own. And so when we talk about boycotting these shows and these networks and all that stuff. Will it happen in mass? It could, absolutely. But it goes back to that conditioning and that comfort to just be like, well, all right, they did this, they did Nene bogus, or they did whoever bogus, but portion of them getting their check, so we good. Like one black woman don't matter. You know, we could sacrifice.
Right. No, that's good, sis. That's good.
Those are conversations we have. It's like it's either all of us or none of us, right? And that needs to be the mentality and the mindset. And how do we get people to that place? It comes back to, again, respecting and protecting Black women, to really instill the importance and the value of what we are to this community, what we are to this world, what we were in ancestry, and what we will be in the future. Those are the conversations that we need to have.
Okay, I just had a moment. I just thought about how we, even going back to your point earlier about the seeds that create this discord, it's data, it's research, it's the things that we are given as supposed to be, okay, here's something that's supposed to support you. Case in point, we're in a national teacher shortage, a teacher crisis. For years, Black women, it's been white women, just so people can be reminded, white women have led the field, followed by, you know, white men being in, you know, the school boards and controlling the money and the policies, followed by Black women. Black women have been around in education in strong numbers for years, and have dealt with the real hard lift of discipline and fighting against the system that had created policies that disenfranchise and criminalize our children. However, when the conversations around equity started happening, there was a narrative that was driven by the other side to say, well, we need to have, and I'm saying this because I'm seeing how it's carried out. We need to have more male educators of color in classrooms. And it is used as the way to divide and conquer, to say, well, Black men need to be administrators. They need to handle discipline because they're better at doing it, because Black women are failing at doing it. Look at Black women that are leading these schools in different areas. And that's a narrative that we create instead of saying, no, we need to diversify the teacher pipeline, period. And we need to make sure that teachers are paid better, period. Because teachers are not paid well because it is a pink collar field, and it is not respected because it is driven and led by women. But we also should have a woman that's leading it. And I'll even say this, that a Black woman should be the director, you know, a secretary of education that develops a team to say that we are going to truly and really, you know, revamp or undo a system that is failing so many children that we know that has been doing it for a while. So when I see a president do that, to say that we're going to start with education, and we're going to start with transportation and housing, and we're going to have Black women at the helm that are going to be supported and making change, then I may feel like, you know, America is moving in the direction of trying to really make some change.
Listen, Joe ain't even tapped into this Lift Every Voice plan. You know, it's like that's a whole nother subject. So the fact, and in that plan is supposed to be equity in education and quality in education for Black people. He ain't even tapped into that. So don't even get me started on that, because
I mean, that's another show. You know, I like to drop nuggets too, just so you guys can think about that. Do your own research, because these conversations are only important, in my opinion, if we're sparking change. If we are saying, you know what, Toya is being reached, you know, Carolyn is being reached, Aisha is being reached. Now they're gonna go back and get 2 or 3 people. You know, we got to use as many methods and strategies as we possibly can to reach people, keep them engaged, and keep them empowered. And what spaces are we creating where Black women are actually, you know, I'm actually thinking about having parents on Atlanta that represent the kids that are always being talked about. I don't want the perfect parent on Atlanta. I don't want the parent that's going to come and have their suit on. I want the parent that's going to come comfortable and have 5 kids in the background. And baby, listen, I just want to make sure that we're going to be done on time, because, you know, I got to get lunch ready. I want that parent on, because that's the parent that we need to be reaching. Like, well, what kind of support do you really need? And I'm pretty sure they're going to say, you know what, they can give me these laptops that are old and they're not even functioning. And now we got to use one charger for 5 laptops, and then the software doesn't match up with the computer. So I got to try to navigate all this, and I'm trying to do hair, and I'm trying to do nails, and my boyfriend finna come in the house and get on my nerves about he hungry, and I'm like, why didn't you bring some food home? So I want to hear from these parents, right? Because these Black women voices we don't hear.
More than that, and two, we don't hear them because, again, people count those parents out, right?
Right.
It's not just about what they need, it's about what they have to contribute. And so when I think about people like Sarah Carpenter and even Maritza, who's tuned in, and all, all the women of color that we're affiliated with in this work, Lakeisha in Oakland, and man, just so many others across the country. These are Black women and Black grandparents who have done the work of raising their families and also do the work of being activists, who people on the average will probably count out because, oh, well, that person got, a Southern twang, or this person grew up in this zip code, or whatever the case may be, whatever qualifiers they have to count them out as maybe uneducated or whatever the case may be. They're going to use them and push these women out of the conversation, when those, in actuality, those are people that we need to be talking to, because Miss Sarah Carpenter in Memphis, baby, when I tell you I learned so much from her, I learned a lot, and she's getting it done. And she's the one.
Every voice matters.
So Biden around the country talking about what you're not going to do to these kids. So those are the parents that not only need to be talking about, we need to be asking them what they need, but also what strategies need to be in place to support our communities and also continue to support Black women, because these are the Black women doing the work. So that's who we definitely need to be talking to.
Yeah, I mean, every voice is important, and we also have to check ourselves on the stereotypes that we perpetuate. I think that it's important for us to hear from women across the spectrum, right? And so I think that it starts with us. Like, you can only do what you can do and what you're willing to do. I know with Atlanta, even though I am a Black male educator, a male educator of color, I definitely use my voice to empower Black women and young Black and brown girls, because I want other Black male and male educators of color to see that, hey, brother, we're not just here for the boys. Like, you make an impact on the girls too, and you play a role. I asked Aisha and some of the young ladies from Atlanta, do you feel like your Black male educators are standing in the gap for you? Are they protecting you? Are they saying something? And y'all got to go check it out on Atlanta to see what their responses were to that question, because it's important. Like, are Black women, feeling like they're protected in schools, in FedEx, in Amazon, in these other spaces where there may be people of color who are in leadership, but they're not speaking out against the sexism or the racism or the professionalism, all of these isms that happen against Black women. So yeah, it's definitely important. So I'm doing my part. I'm just hoping that I'm encouraging other people to do their part as well.
And I'm doing my part too. Like, I want to touch on this. When we think about, this is maybe going a little far, but I'm gonna bring it back. So when we think about heads of households and maybe, Black women being the heads of households, right? Right now in Chicago, we are in a situation where there are 13,000 Black families at risk of being evicted from their homes due to delinquent property taxes, right? And so when we think about protecting Black women, it's like, how do we do that? And so I partnered with another group of millennials, and we're doing a fundraiser to help raise the money to pay those taxes. And that's how, when you think about, and so I think that in this show, and I brought this up because we have a lot of conversations about what needs to happen. And I think that as activists, while we have those conversations, we also have those strategies. And it's important for us to talk about that strategic piece too, so that people who may not be aware of or have maybe the capacity to put the strategy together can leave these conversations and be like, oh, okay, I heard this on TDRS. Let me, check it out. Let me implement it here. And so those are some ways where we're supporting not only Black women, but we're supporting Black kids, we're supporting Black families, we're supporting Black communities. And of course, this money just doesn't come with okay, we go pay these property taxes, and then, that's going to be that. There's an educational advocacy piece component attached to it too. And so, when we talk about, again, protecting Black women, it happens in conversation, but it happens in action. And there are so many areas where we can protect and support Black women that we just have to be creative and innovative and look at the areas where there are gaps. And that's sure that where there's a gap, there's a Black woman or Black women kind of, struggling and floundering and needs help. And so that's where we step in to help. Me as a Black woman, Jason as a Black man, Black allies, whatever. it's up to us to support each other. So that's all I'm saying, y'all. When y'all think about it, it's really not that hard. Like people think that activism and advocacy is this, you standing on the front lines, you might get a dog sicked on you back in the day, you might get a fire hydrant, you might get maced, you might get shot by police, and those are all possibilities. But there are so many lanes in activism that you can embark on. It just really depends on your passion and where your impact is. And so
Yeah.
just be, just be innovative and just think about where you can help, and particularly where you can help Black women, because again, we have this elected official who's fighting against misdemeanor charges and potentially jail time for trying to interrupt the governor, or trying to stop the governor of Georgia from signing legislation that would essentially throw us back into that will rescind voting rights for Black people, because that's where it came from. It's not about protecting elections. It's that they were pissed that a whole bunch of Black people showed up to boot Trump's ass out of office, and they needed to stop that just in case they want his dirty ass to run next term. So
and these Republican leaders, they don't want to be seen as weak. They don't want their last story to be, you lost the state of Georgia, you lost this state, you lost this county, you were the weakest link that caused white supremacy to begin to fall further. And so, of course, this is war, y'all. They don't want to lose. They don't care about going down in history as doing the right thing. They care about how they're going to look to their ancestors and those who were left behind to tell their stories, and they don't want to be left behind as weak. And that's a reality. Like, Governor Kemp is not going to magically change his mind and say, okay, after, voter suppression in the election that put me into being, the governor, to what we've seen in the recent election, I'm not just going to go now and say, oh, I want to do the right thing. No, y'all, it don't work like that. He's going to continue to do whatever he can to sustain what little power and control that they have left before it's equally distributed. And that's the thing. I want to segue to this though. Ashe magazine, you can check this out. Publication. It looks good, actually. Let me do like that. Bam.
That is nice.
This is Ashe magazine. My baby cousin, Z Finley, who did one of the Atlanta shows with Aisha and a couple of the other students who are watching now, they created their own magazine. They were like, I'm tired of, let me tell you, my cousin Z, she's 13. Savannah Greer, who is the African diaspora editor, she is 17. The style editor is 18 years old. These are all Black and brown girls that said, we want to create a magazine. So I wanted to share this because my cousin Jamila, who is the daughter of my late aunt, Dr. Paulette Fleming, that helped my dad and I create our family foundation honoring Black women. She helped them as an educator develop this. And so educators, we do have power. We can change the narrative. We don't have to wait on schools to push in curriculum of things that look like us. They created their own magazine. Y'all, let me tell you, their own magazine that celebrates Black women. They weren't waiting on somebody to celebrate Black women. They started doing it on their own. Finding joy, addressing what happens to your Black girl if she's molested or if she's raped or if she's taken. Like, how do you deal with that? Social, emotional trauma, like real life things that Black women and Black girls don't get the support around. They created that space. And so I wanted to leave, just on that. Ashe magazine. You can check them out at Fresno Black Girl Project. And we can share these things, y'all. Like Tanisha mentioned the project that she's working on. I'm in Atlanta. I still shared her thing. And you know what happened? I have 4 people from Atlanta who live in Atlanta that were like, I'm from the Chi. And when I saw you post it, I was like, oh man, that's happening back home. So let me donate, and then let me share it with people, because we're in a global society. People everybody in Atlanta weren't born in Atlanta. Everybody that's in Portsmouth, Virginia, and they not just stuck there. People are transient, that people are moving. So that's coalition building. When you think about these strategies of what you can do to help make change, share these conversations, share, the links to our blogs, our articles, our books, our schools, all of these businesses that are coming into play. Like, share this, because that's the power that we do have, is to be able to share in what we invest our time, our talent, and our treasure in. I'm gonna throw that in for the Easter weekend. What are we doing to invest our time, talent, and treasure?
I know that's right. And yeah, thank Jay. I appreciate it. You know, half of Chicago live in Atlanta anyway. When we leave the South Side, we run our ass either to Atlanta or Dallas. So we appreciate it. But y'all, so yeah, you know, I think the if you haven't picked it up yet in this conversation, we are talking about protecting and supporting Black women, and what, you know, we about to get ready to head out. But as you navigate or you journey through this week, think about ways that you can help and support a Black woman. Jay, can you drop the link for the magazine in the comments? Because we just love that, and people absolutely need to know where to pick that up from to definitely support our young Black women and just, you know, learn more about the struggles and the joys of Black women. So
Gotcha, I'm doing it right now.
About that. So while Jay is dropping that link in the comments, so you guys can check that magazine out and support. We just want to, you know, thank you guys as always for tuning in, and go out and, you know, like we said, support Black women, support Black people, be bold and unapologetic in your activism, and most importantly, share this broadcast out, because we need people, again, in on these conversations. We need people in on these strategies. We need way more co-conspirators, and we need way more people on the front line. So with that, y'all, Jay, you got anything before we head out?
No, just, you know, do your part. I dropped the magazine email address. It's Fresno Black Girl Magic Project, so you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram. And I would just say, do your part to change the narrative, y'all. We have the opportunity to, this may be the ELA teacher in me and the activist. However, I am big on literature. So we change the narrative by how we're reaching different audiences, building allies, and building coalitions to make change. And that's all I got for the people.
All right, bet. All right, y'all, we finna head out of here. Check us out next Monday, same time, same place, talking that real shit with my brother Jason B. Allen and Neo, who's not with us today, but we'll be back next week. Actually, I won't be here next week because I'm taking my ass on vacation. But
I'll be here with the fam. We'll hold it down, and check us out on Atlanta. I definitely want to shout out all of the young Black and brown girls who are lifting their voices to make change here in Georgia. They are relentless, and they are showing that Gen Z is definitely here about the business for equity and change, and I'm all here for it. So yeah, shout out to the Atlanta Student Coalition, and peace and love, y'all.